to talk about Russia, about how Prof. Malik Badri influenced Islamic psychology in Russia. So, Associate Professor Dr. Pavlova Olga Sergeyevna is an associate professor at the Department of Cross-Cultural Psychology and Psychological Problems of Multicultural Education, Moscow State University of Psychology and Education. She defended her PhD thesis in pedagogy on the topic formation of the communicative activity of preschooler with general aspects under development at the Moscow State Pedagogical University in 1998. She worked as vice rector and dean of the socio-psychological faculty of the Moscow Open Social Academy. Since 2017, she has been the head of the Association for Psychological Assistance to Muslim created on her initiative, and she is the leader of Islamic psychology in Russia. Please welcome Dr. Olga.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear colleagues and friends. It has already been a year since our outstanding Ustaz and friend, Dr. Malik Badri, is not with us. He is no longer among us, but he will remain with us forever, because many specialists around the world read his works and are inspired by his ideas. The works of Dr. Malik Badri paved the way for comprehending and formulating the basic principles and criteria of Islamic psychology throughout the world and the Russian-speaking area, Russia and the state of the post-Soviet area. The study of the book Contemplation, an Islamic psychospiritual study, which was first published in Russian in 2008, opened up the possibility of using the Islamic view on personality and their feelings, the idea of the soul and fitra, the heart and intention. The ideas of this book helped Russian specialists raise the issue to taking into account the worldview and ethical beliefs of a Muslim client in counseling. And is in great demand. This book came into my hands in only 17. After reading it, I began to look for information about its author. This great joy I discovered that Dr. Badri is the author of many amazing books and is known all over the world. Then I decided to write to a respected author, and he responded to me later with joy and attention. I was happy. We talk and write a lot about Islamic psychology and psychological counseling for Muslims. We are looking for methods and techniques of counseling, always pointing out the most important aspects of counseling is the personality of psychologist himself. Such a person able to show us all the way forward was Dr. Malik. His openness and generosity, attention to people, is commitment and help and responsibility. These are the most important features that attracted others to Malik. You can see letters all and these words, my dear daughter Aliyah. Here I should clarify. When I was born, my parents, who were Orthodox Christians, called me Olga. When I turned to Islam in 2013, I took the name Aliyah. And our face-to-face meeting with the doctor happened during an international conference in Istanbul. Praise the Almighty that we, 3 psychologists from Russia, attended that conference and met the doctor.
Sorry. My name is Olga. I'm from Russia. Russia. Yes, they are so the Association of Russia.
That was a very touching moment of our meeting. Now we often review videos and photos from that conference and remember our teacher. At the conference in Istanbul, we presented the teacher published in Russia in 2018. This book is a translation of two his works into Russian, The Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists and Cyber Counseling for Muslim Clients. They came out in a collection under the general title, Theory and Practice of Islamic Psychology, and were immediately called in Russia the Manifesto of Islamic Psychology. It is used in working disbelievers, not only Muslims, but also by secular specialists and Christian psychologists. The ideas contained in the book were received by the Muslim community of Russia with great joy. The work of Malik Badri contributed to the understanding of multicultural approach to psychological counseling as a tool for fine-tuning those counseling skills that are related to the context, history, and cultural values. A multicultural approach helps to go beyond the cultural context in which this or that methods of counseling was created. It allows you to bring into counseling the history of connections, belonging, and cultural identity, which is the most important component of adult subjectivity. Many prescriptions grow out the cultural environment. Ignoring their value and significance can only increase the neurotic conflict. In this case, there is a risk of misunderstanding up to conflict with the client. In a multicultural approach, they use a powerful source of clients' connections and belonging for personal growth. The book of Malik Badri, published in Russian, laid the foundation for understanding approach to psychological counseling for Muslims. Experts in Russia consider psychological counseling of Muslims as professional psychological assistants, using knowledge about the feature of the client's face that are significant for his personality, his religious beliefs, religious language, secret stories and legends, ritual practices, as well as the traditions and the customs of Muslim peoples. The use of the therapeutic effect of religious practices in the course of psychotherapy in Russia has its long history associated with Orthodox Christianity, since most of the Russian population professes Orthodox Christianity. The works of Russian authors who are Orthodox Christians and write a lot about Christian psychology are devoted to this topic. The classics in this context are the works of the famous Russian psychotherapist Fyodor Vasylyuk, who in his work Experience and Prayer reflects the results of studying the process of personal experience in a situation of crisis and the influence of spiritual experience on him. He considers prayer as a coping strategy that allows solving the issue of dealing with this experience through spiritual potential. Currently, about 20 million Muslims live in Russia. These are representatives of different peoples who are part of a large Muslim ummah. And it is a great happiness that in the last 5-6 years, Islamic psychology has been intensively developing in our country. The impetus for the development of which were laid by the ideas of the outstanding scholar Malik Badri. Let's see what questions Dr. Badri posed in his writings and how Russian psychologists answer them. The first question: is not modern psychology entirely a materialistic product? In the 20th century, non-religious psychology based on an atheist worldview gained the wide development and distribution in Russia, since the Soviet Union was a country of dominant atheism and materialism. Many psychologists still deny the possibility of the presence of God in therapeutic work. That is why discussions as to whether Islamic psychology is possible or admissible have not subsided in our country so far. The second question: do Muslims need modern psychology? Also in present Russia, disputes do not subside whether Muslims need a psychologist. To some extent, these discussions are quite reasonable. Modern psychological assistance is often not only non-religious, but also does not take into account the ethnocultural specifics of their client. Eurocentrism, individualistic values, as emphasis on the individual are characteristic of the worldview of many Russian psychologists. The exclusive focus on individual resource and the lack of the sufficiently deep understanding of the role of collective resource is a feature of the Russian language's psychological discourse. In Russia and in the post-Soviet area, in general, there are psychological systems which take into account environmental and social factors to a lesser extent. For example, classical cognitive behavioral therapy, psychoanalysis, humanistic psychology. The first question: is there a way in which psychology can coexist in harmony with Islam? There is certainly such a way, Dr. Badri showed it to us. This path is connected with the development of cross-cultural and Islamic psychology, so that the provision of psychological assistance to Muslims is based on the religious and ethnocultural resource of the client. To implement these ideas, it is necessary to develop the cultural sensitivity of psychologists, their sensitivity to understanding the specifics of various Russian ethno-religious communities. What needs to be done? We should include in the history of psychology information about the development of psychology in the work of Muslim scientists. In the course of psychologist training at universities, one of the important disciplines is the history of psychology. Unfortunately, in modern Russian textbooks, you will hardly find the name of prominent Muslim scientists, such as Al-Kindi, Al-Balkhi, Ghazali, and many others. To learn about the level of development of medieval Muslim thought in the wonderful book Senses of the Soul, translated into Russian, written in the 9th century. It was Dr. Malik who introduced and translated the famous book into English. Also psychology as a science appeared only in the 18th century. This work needs to be continued. We should develop multicultural foundations for the formation of the psychological worldview of a modern specialist and decolonized psychological thought. Theories and practice, which are largely a product of Western civilization, dominate the social science in Muslim countries, argued Malik Badri. It's hard to disagree with him. However, many psychologists in Russia still adhere to the delusion regarding the absence of an ideological foundation in psychology, its neutrality. I would like to quote the eminent Muslim scholar Sayyid Muhammad Naqib al-Atas: modern knowledge is not neutral. It is thoroughly situated with religious, cultural, and philosophical premises that reflect the consciousness and experience of Western men. At the same time, non-Western countries and ideologies are perceived as undeveloped. Indeed, the Muslim world itself tends to perceive itself through imported perceptual models. A Muslim scientist, Abdel Wahab el-Misiri, called this perceptual addition. He meant that the Muslims are dependent on the Western perceptual models. Science based on the belief in individualism, competitiveness, and self-sufficiency becomes an indirect, perhaps unintended means of cultural and intellectual colonization. We developed these ideas while training psychologists at the Department of Cross-Cultural Psychology at the Moscow State University of Psychology and Education. Our new master's program, Psychology of East, developed in 2019, implements an integrated approach to the training of psychologists based on the ideas of our teacher, our Ustaz Malik Badri. The program is aimed at training practical psychologists who have the skills of intercultural communication and psychological counseling, taking into account the ethnic and religious characteristics of the peoples in the East. This is a unique master's program which has no analogies in the entire Russian-speaking area and possible in the whole world. Our undergraduate study the following disciplines you can see on the slide. The program is implemented online, so its students are residents of so much Muslim countries as the United Arab Emirates and Jordan, Egypt and Qatar, Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. This is the framework of cooperation between the All-Russian Association for Psychological Assistance to Muslims and the Institute for the Integration of Knowledge. Admission to the course of Islamic psychology is taking place for the second time. The course is in great demand and great interest. Currently, the task is to create an ethical code for a Muslim psychologist, which is caused by the discussion of various ethical issues of counseling in Russia. Overcoming Western ethical ethnocentrism, said Malik Badri, is the most important task of Muslim psychologists in Russia and around the world. Realizing all the ideas of our Ustaz, Dr. Malik Badri, our association pays great attention to the development of scientific activities in Russia. For this aim, empirical studies are conducted, with their results published in the international peer-reviewed journal Minbar Islamic Studies. Research works are devoted to study topics that you can see on the slide. I invite you to become the author of the articles in our journal. With this QR code, you can go to our site. The translated books of our foreign colleagues into Russian. For example, not too long ago, on February 3rd, the presentation of the book by the respected Dr. Hussein Rasul in Islamic Counseling took place in Moscow. The publication of the book in Russia aroused great interest, not only among Muslim psychologists, but also among many secular psychologists who seek to learn the feature of psychological counseling for Muslims. The Association of Psychological Assistance to Muslims was created in Russia in 2017 during the Scientific Practical Conference, Islamic Psychological Stability as a Basis of Personal and Social Well-being in Moscow. This would not have happened but for the inspired help of our Ustaz, making the first timid steps in the field of Islamic psychology. They really needed his support. Dr. Badri dreamed of coming to Russia to get to know us. Unfortunately, his health condition prevented him from doing so. We invited Malik Badri to be the guest of honor at our annual conference. Regretting the impossibility of coming for health reasons, in 2018, Dr. Malik welcomed the participation of our conference in writing. To my dear sons and daughter participating in the second All-Russian Conference on Islamic Psychology in Moscow. Only due to health reasons, I missed a great opportunity to be with you in Moscow and get acquainted with your research on Islamic psychology. As a founder of the International Association of Islamic Psychology, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you for organizing this blessed conference. Please do not belittle your significant efforts in incorporating Islamic and cultural perspectives into psychology. You are making history and paving the way for young psychologists to realize the value of Islam as a religion and worldview in helping their clients and in reshaping, transforming psychology. Malik Badri, founder and a president of International Association of Islamic Psychology. The merit of Malik Badri for the entire scientific community is enormous. He was the main ideologist for the implementation of culturally sensitive therapy and multicultural therapy in relation to Muslim clients. Throughout his long and fruitful scientific life, he implemented the ideas of decolonization of psychological knowledge. He developed cross-cultural approach in psychodiagnostics and counseling. He was an outstanding scholar, educator, a model of a Muslim personality. I prayerfully wish all of us to be worthy of the memory of our Ustaz and to develop his ideas in order to provide the most effective psychological assistance to Muslims around the world. I pray to the Almighty to send down the best fate in paradise to our Ustaz. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Amin. Thank you, Dr. Olga Pavlova,